You find yourself at your desk, gazing at an email invitation for a social event you have no desire to attend. Your finger hovers over the accept button, and that familiar knot forms in your stomach. The one that appears when you're about to agree to something that conflicts with who you truly are, or what you genuinely want. Sound familiar? We've all experienced this. In a world that constantly pulls us in different directions, learning to say no isn't merely a skill. It's an essential art for living a life that reflects our true selves and values. But why is it so challenging? More importantly, how can we improve at it? Today, we're going to explore the Stoic approach to saying no to things that don't align with our values. Don't worry if you're unfamiliar with Stoicism. By the end of this video, you'll have a practical toolkit for making decisions that genuinely reflect who you are and what you believe in. Let's begin with a straightforward question. What are values? Consider them your personal North Star, the guiding principles that shape your decisions and character. They are not merely abstract concepts. They form the backbone of who you are. Whether it's honesty, creativity, or family, your values are uniquely yours. However, in our hyper-connected world, it's easy to lose sight of these values. We're bombarded with expectations, social pressures, and endless opportunities, much like being in a crowded marketplace where everyone is clamoring for your attention. In such chaos, saying yes often feels simpler than saying no. This is where Stoicism comes into play. Now, don't let the name intimidate you. Stoicism isn't about being emotionless or enduring hardships without complaint. It's a practical philosophy that teaches us how to live well by focusing on what we can control and letting go of what we cannot. The ancient Stoics, like Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus, grasped something profound. True freedom comes from aligning our actions with our values. They believed that by saying no to things that do not serve our purpose, we are saying yes to a life of integrity and inner peace. Consider how often you've agreed to something only to regret it immediately. Maybe it was a work project that contradicted your ethics, or a social obligation that drained your energy. Each time we say yes to something that doesn't resonate with our values, we erode our sense of self. But here's the good news. Every no is an opportunity. It's a chance to reaffirm who you are and what you stand for. It allows you to practice what the Stoics term the dichotomy of control, concentrating on what we can influence and accepting what we cannot. Let's break this down with a real-life example. Imagine you're Sarah, a graphic designer. You receive a lucrative job offer to create marketing materials for a company whose practices you find unethical. While the money could alleviate many financial concerns, your friends and family urge you to take it, insisting it's just a job and that you can't afford to be picky in this economy. This is where the rubber meets the road. On one side, you face external pressures and the allure of financial security. On the other, you have your values, integrity, and belief in ethical business practices. A Stoic approach would prompt Sarah to look within and ask herself, what matters more, short-term gain or long-term peace of mind? By declining the job, Sarah isn't merely foregoing money. She's affirming her principles. She is choosing to control the one thing she truly can, her choices and actions. You might think that's all well and good, but saying no isn't easy. You're right. Standing firm in your values requires courage, especially when faced with pressure or tempting opportunities. Remember, courage isn't the absence of fear. It's taking action in the presence of fear. The Stoics understood that living according to your values often means swimming against the current, but they also recognized that this struggle is what gives life meaning. As Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." So how do we cultivate this strength? How do we learn to say no without feeling guilty or afraid? It begins with clarity. Get clear on what truly matters to you. Take a moment right now to reflect. What are your non-negotiables? Which principles would you uphold even at a personal cost? Once you have this clarity, the next step is practice. Like any skill, saying no becomes easier with time. Start small. The next time you receive an invitation to an event you don't wish to attend, politely decline. When asked to take on a task that doesn't align with your priorities, respectfully explain why you cannot. Remember, saying no doesn't have to lead to conflict. It can be done gracefully and respectfully. A simple, "Thank you for thinking of me, but I have to decline," is often sufficient. You don't owe anyone a lengthy explanation for honoring your values. As you practice, you'll notice something interesting. Every time you say no to something that doesn't align with your values, you create space for what does. It's like decluttering your life, removing what doesn't serve you to make room for what does. This is where the concept of essentialism comes into play, a modern philosophy echoing many Stoic principles. Essentialism teaches us to distinguish between what's genuinely important and what's merely noise. By saying no to the non-essential, we free up our time, energy, and resources for what truly matters. Consider this. Every yes is a trade-off. When you agree to one thing, you inevitably decline something else. The question is, are you making that trade-off consciously? Are you saying yes to what aligns with your values, or are you allowing others to dictate your choices? I can almost hear some of you asking, what about compromise? Isn't life about give and take? Absolutely. The Stoics weren't advocating for a rigid, inflexible approach to life. They recognized the importance of social connections and civic duty. The key is distinguishing between necessary compromises and unnecessary concessions. Imagine you're Alex, a parent balancing a demanding career and family life. Your boss asks you to take on a project that requires you to work late for the next month, causing you to miss your child's soccer games. At first glance, it might seem like a clear conflict between work and family values, but let's delve deeper. The Stoic approach here isn't about making a binary choice between work and family. It's about finding a solution that honors both values, professional responsibility and family commitment. Alex might negotiate a flexible schedule, propose working from home on certain days, or involve the family in the decision-making process. This is where the Stoic principle of preferred indifference comes into play. The Stoics believed that while we should prefer certain outcomes, we shouldn't be overly attached to them. In Alex's case, the preferred outcome may be a perfect balance between work and family. However, if that's not achievable, the focus shifts to responding virtuously to the situation. Alex might take on the project while finding creative ways to stay connected with the family during this busy period, or he may decline the project but propose an alternative that meets the company's needs without sacrificing family time. The key is that Alex can stand behind his decision with integrity, regardless of the outcome. This leads us to an important point. Saying no isn't about avoiding difficulty or seeking an easy life. Sometimes saying no is the more challenging choice. It may require turning down a promotion to remain true to your values, or ending a relationship that doesn't align with your life goals. The Stoics would argue that these difficult no's are often the most significant ones. Think of a time when you declined something tempting that didn't resonate with your values. How did it feel at that moment? Likely uncomfortable, right? But how did it feel afterward? Often, there's a sense of relief and lightness. That's the sensation of being aligned with your true self. Now, let's address the elephant in the room. Fear. Fear of missing out, fear of disappointing others, fear of consequences. These fears often compel us to say yes when we should say no. The Stoics had much to say about fear. Seneca, one of the great Stoic philosophers, wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." What he meant is that our fears are frequently exaggerated. We envision worst-case scenarios that rarely unfold. Next time you're afraid to say no, ask yourself, what's the worst that could happen? And how likely is it? More often than not, you'll discover that the consequences of saying no are far less severe than you imagined. Let's consider a practical example. Imagine you're Jamie, a college student. Your friends pressure you to go out drinking the night before a significant exam. You want to study, but you fear being left out or labeled as boring. The fear of social rejection is pushing you toward a yes. A Stoic approach would encourage Jamie to confront this fear. Is one night of socializing worth compromising your academic goals? Will true friends reject you for prioritizing your studies? By facing these fears directly, Jamie can make a choice based on values rather than fleeting emotions. Saying no to peer pressure is challenging at any age, but remember that every time you decline something that doesn't align with your values, you affirm your authentic self. You're building a track record of integrity that will benefit you throughout your life. Now let's discuss a common pitfall: the guilt trip. Whether from family, friends, or colleagues, we've all faced subtle or overt pressure to say yes out of guilt.